Well, welcome to another edition of Navigating Trump 2.0. This is the show that takes a look back at the week that was in the nation's capital through the lens of the second Trump administration. And joining me once again, CBN News chief political analyst David Brody and host of CBN's Quick Start podcast, Dan Andros. Gentlemen, let's start off with Russia and Ukraine. And I think this week we heard the president's tone shift a little bit with regard to Vladimir Putin. Now, in recent weeks, we have heard President Trump's rhetoric regarding President Putin and the forcefulness with which he has been speaking about the Russian dictator has, I think, grown with more anger and more frustration in this war that just continues on. And it now appears that Republicans in Congress have the green light to tee up new sanctions against Russia for their continued bombing of Ukraine, and specifically the bombing of civilians in Kyiv. The president also reportedly expected to make a major announcement on Monday regarding Russia. Unclear exactly as to what that is, whether that will have something to do with sanctions or whether it will be something else. David, let me come to you with this first. What's your take on how we have seen the president's messaging evolve with regards to Russia and Vladimir Putin and some of what we heard from him this week?
Here's the bottom line on all of this, okay? Trump is the guy, right? The art of the deal guy, but there's been no deal with Ukraine and Russia, even though he said he could get it done in 24 hours. But here's the problem. How are you going to make a deal with someone who doesn't want to make a deal? That's the ultimate problem here. That's the sticking point. Zelensky will make the deal. He's losing the war. And by the way, hats off to Ukraine as it relates to taking it to the Russians in terms of everybody thought it would have been over by now, and it's not. But he is losing the war and he's losing territory, so he's got to make some sort of deal. Why would Putin ever want to make a deal? I mean, this is what I've been saying, guys, for a couple of months now. Mm-hmm. And yet, Trump has been trying to get Putin to the negotiating table. And even though there's been negotiations with, some of the top level Russian officials, it's not going anywhere, because why would Putin stop? He's winning the war. He wants all of Ukraine. And so from that standpoint, Trump can't make a deal because Putin doesn't want to make a deal. And it's really that simple. And I don't want to say finally, but I'll just say it. Finally, Trump is realizing this. This is the shift. He's getting a real good idea from Putin here that, this thing's not going to work. It's just not. I could have told you that a couple of months ago. Not that I'm smarter than Trump, but I could have told you that. And so that's it. So, a lot of people might criticize Trump and say, well, you said you were going to make a deal, but you didn't. I would suggest that you can't even get to the negotiating table if you don't have partners willing to make a deal. So I'm not necessarily putting this on Trump. Putin's a bad guy. He's been a bad actor all along. And now Trump is fully aware of it.
Well, Dan, I think it's interesting. And I think David's exactly right. You can't make a deal with someone who doesn't want to make a deal. But I wonder if it showed some. The word naivete is the only word I can really think of that strikes, but maybe it was a hopeless optimism from the president to think that through his force of personality that he could get Vladimir Putin to a negotiating table and get him to agree to a deal when he is winning a war and he doesn't really have anything that he needs from the United States or Ukraine at this point. So to couch it as this was going to be an easy thing to fix and an easy thing to take care of. And now, of course, we're seeing that it's anything but an easy thing to take care of. And I think the tone that I'm getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, the president, it feels to me like he feels burned by Putin a little bit here in how he's been talking about him over these last couple of weeks. So, I think this is something like David just said. We all could have guessed that this is going to be how this was going to go. Was the president wise in trying to make nice with Putin for the first few months and now realizing that was fruitless? Was that a wise course of action, or should we have been where we are right now at the start of things for the start of his second administration?
Well, I think what he did was he essentially tried to, well, first of all, he believed in his own ability. Like David said, he's the art of the deal guy. Like, I think he believes in his ability to get a deal done. And it's consistent with him not wanting, to have wars and like perpetuate and continue fighting these wars and just keep going on. So I think it was consistent from that front, and it was worth a shot. But the way he did it ended up, I guess, not working out, obviously, because we're still here. But what he did was, remember, I think he essentially extended an olive branch of sorts to Putin to try to show him that, hey, we're just not another puppet for Ukraine, and we're not just going to, bash only Russia in this situation, like everyone else has done. He called Zelensky on the carpet there at the White House and kind of humiliated him. But what did Putin do with that? So I think after that, Trump probably thought, okay, I've extended an olive branch here. Now maybe he'll listen to me. Maybe that gives me some in here that I have some leverage and show that I'm not, just a Ukrainian puppet here and just on their team. And I think you're 100% right. He feels burned by that. And I think what we're seeing is, those meetings with Zelensky where he criticized Zelensky, that was back in February. So we have in February them talking about optimism for a deal. Then there's that kind of clash with Zelensky. Then after that, a few weeks go by, and now Trump's out there saying, okay, we're waiting, put up or shut up, I think was the quote that he said. And then you see that turn into frustration that nothing's done. And I think when you look at what Putin says, he's like, oh, sure, we'll talk. I mean, as long as they address the root of the issue here. And of course, the root of the issue is they think Ukraine should be Russia's. So there's no agreement to be had on that, right?
No.
So I think he's finding it out that Putin really won't stop. And I think he's very irritated by that. And I think, honestly, Putin may be underestimating Trump and how frustrated he gets when somebody makes him look bad on the national stage.
Well, David, I guess the question that's left now is what's next? It seems as though sanctions are on the table, but we also saw this week the president restart defensive weapons being shipped to Ukraine. That comes after it was reported that the Pentagon had decided to cease those shipments, and that created what appeared to be some kind of friction between the defense secretary and the president. Maybe not anything on camera, but the reporting is that there are some in the White House who didn't know that Defense Secretary Hegseth had made the decision to halt defensive weapons going to Ukraine. But David, part of what I know a lot of Trump supporters wanted to see come to an end was military assistance to Ukraine. So I wonder how his supporters feel, how MAGA feels about the idea of sanctions on Russia, sending weapons to Ukraine, and whether in order to get this war to stop, whether the president is willing to do more of like what President Biden did during his term.
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a decent size of MAGA right now saying, wait a minute, this isn't what I voted for. And so that's a concern for the Trump administration. But look, it's one thing to be someone who has no influence, like even a MAGA influencer, like one of those social media influencers, MAGA, kind of pontificating on X. It's one thing to do that. It's another thing to actually govern as president of the United States. And, President Trump is trying to thread the needle here. I do want to, and so I think it's going to be a bit of an issue for the Trump administration. But then again, they've got to do what they've got to do. Let me just say one last thing to kind of put a button on the Ukraine situation. When Zelensky and Trump had that tete-a-tete, and that's putting it mildly, in the Oval Office, here's the thing. What happened there is that it emboldened Putin at that point. I think Trump thought, as Dan was talking, you guys were talking about it, I think Trump thought, okay, hey, here's the olive branch. No, it actually worked the exact opposite for him. Trump looked at that and go, great, perfect. So, okay, so that the weapons to Ukraine are going to dry up. It turns out they're not, actually. But Putin's thinking, yeah, well, okay, that's going to stop. They've got a fractured relationship. I'll take advantage of it, split your enemy, if you will. And that's what happened. So anyhow, it's just a food for thought here.
Well, I do want to transition to one of the other big topics in Trump world this week, and that, of course, is the Epstein files. And Attorney General Pam Bondi and her future in the administration, of course, reporting on Friday, indicated that Bondi's job may be growing less secure by the day. We heard that FBI Assistant Director Dan Bongino might be looking for a way out, frustrated over the DOJ's decision not to release any additional Epstein files and officially declaring that his death was a suicide. And FBI Director Kash Patel has gone along with this decision. And there's a lot of anger in MAGA world from folks who believe that the DOJ was hiding things about the Epstein case, the Epstein files that are out there or supposedly out there, the a video in the jail cell, missing a minute of between when right up to when he died. And so there's a whole list of conspiracy theories that are out there that I know a lot of Trump supporters fully believe, and they believe that when their people were inside the DOJ, that finally the truth would come to light. So there's a lot of anger, and people, I think, feel a little betrayed by the Trump DOJ's decision not to move forward with anything Epstein from this point on. And David, let me throw this your way first. How angry are they?
Extremely angry. And this should not be overstated. This is not going to go away. This is a top tier issue for MAGA, and they're going to want heads to roll. And it's going to start with Pam Bondi. So I think Pam Bondi is on some sort of a job watch at this point, whether or not she'll have a job in a week or two. They've got to figure this out. When I say they, I'm talking about the Trump administration needs to figure out how in the world they get out of this from a strategy standpoint, because you can't say that, hey, we've got some juicy stuff. Oh, wait, we've got nothing. You can't say that. And that's what Bondi did. And that's why Bondi's taking the hit, because Bondi was the one that said, oh boy, I got this binder. Oh, come on, MAGA social influencers, come on over to the White House. We're going to have a big old Epstein day. And then it turned out there were all these things in the files were things that had already been released. There was nothing new. Anyhow, the analogy is like kind of saying, hey, George Clooney's going to show up at the movie premiere. Instead, Joe Schmo shows up. Like, well, wait a minute. You promised me Clooney. So, that's basically the problem for Bondi. There's a whole lot more to it, but just understand, at least there's something very important here to understand with MAGA. This, first of all, to say this is conspiracy stuff, hogwash. We shouldn't say it's conspiracy stuff. This is an integrity issue as it relates to certain things were promised and said, hey, we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to show you what's going on. And they didn't show anything. And so the question is, there's a lot of questions. Was there anything to begin with? Well, I guess we don't know the final results of that. But the larger issue to me, and why this isn't going away, is because everybody wants to think that MAGA's all embroiled in conspiracy stuff and deep state stuff, and everybody's destroying evidence and this and that, and everybody's in on the cover-up. All true the way MAGA sees it. But the underlying theme here is that this is a moral issue to MAGA. And it's not about Epstein necessarily at all. It's about the child pornography, the child predators, the sexual predators, the client list. Who are these people? Because they want these horrible, horrible people that were involved with Epstein, because there were people involved with Epstein. We know that. They want these people to be held accountable. That's not a conspiracy. They want accountability for sexual predators. And there's something noble and moral about that.
Yeah, Dan, your take on this as well. I mean, I think everything David said is 100% right there, and they're not getting it. They're not getting the answers that they were promised. It's kind of equates to me. I keep coming up with the phrase in my mind. The dog who catches the car. Well, these guys they wanted to be in power in the DOJ. They wanted to have the ability to release these files, release these documents, the client lists and everything, so the truth can be out there. And now they've got the car, they've caught it, but they're not doing with it what their voters wanted them to do with it.
Right, and the messaging is just kind of muddled as well, right? If there's nothing there, you have to have very strong messaging and convincing evidence to show that, because, like David said, you came into this election season ahead of the election promising that, well, we're going to release, the Epstein files and we're going to show whatever information's on there. And then you get it. And then, yeah, you can't just be like, well, just kidding. And there's only a couple possibilities here, right? And one is, okay, that there's actually really nothing more than this guy was, trafficking minors. It was a bunch of no names that were the clients who, like David said, they should be held accountable, whether they're a no name or an influential power broker. And, given all the images that we've seen of who Epstein was palling around with, it seems likely that there's going to be some high profile people on that list, but you can't just convict them on that. You need actual evidence. So maybe there's not enough evidence there on that. So that's one option. Number two, they saw something legitimate in there that made them say, we can't release this, right? And then now they're struggling with the messaging because they can't really say what it is, and maybe it's something we haven't thought of. And then the third possibility, and this is the worst one, that there's people on there it would really take down too many things. It's like mutually assured destruction, that it's top people in all sectors of the government and society, and they would all be burning down, and they've decided they're not going to do it. That would be the worst outcome, I think, if they're still covering it up, right? Mm-hmm. But those are really the only options. I mean, unless I'm missing something, what else could there be?
Well, the one thing that could be is, and there's a lot of reasons why this wouldn't be the case, but that this all was destroyed somehow, some way by either.
You can't look at it.
What's that?
You mean it's destroyed so that there's nothing left?
Yeah. So like somebody got some people, some whatever operatives got their hands on it and said, yeah, no one's ever going to see the light of this is never going to see the light of day. But if that were the case, that would have happened. Well, I don't know. During the Biden administration, I don't know. It's a little too complicated at that point. I'm not sure if I buy that. I just think this was bungled from a strategy standpoint. Here's the other problem too. We always talk about MAGA wants answers. Here's the question. Why doesn't everybody in this country want answers? Why is it just MAGA?
Sure.
No, seriously. I mean, like what, and I don't even make this a Democrat Republican thing. I'm just talking about like a story for every single American out there. Do we not want to see people held accountable for potential crimes that may have been committed? Dan, I agree with you on the issue that, look, there may not be the evidence to do anything about it, which I get, but at the same time, how about just release, some of this, some of the information that you have? I mean, where did the information go then? And whose job is it? So you're saying it's not you guys, but the administration is saying it's their job to say, yeah, we've taken a look at the tons and tons of files of evidence, and we just don't think there's anything here. Well, hold on. Let the public decide on that, not you guys.
Can I interject real quick with a question? Did you guys find it interesting that Trump was the one who was like, you still talking about this guy? Like, I think he really was like, it really seemed to him like he was shocked that people still cared about this. I mean, that's what it seemed like in that cabinet meeting.
And there's people in MAGA ticked off at Trump over that because it was a cavalier attitude, the way they saw it. Because remember, Trump is Trump, right? He's just coming at it saying, hey, you're talking about Epstein? We got Texas floods. We got this, we got that. And you're talking about Epstein? No. They're not talking about Epstein. They're talking about child predators. They're talking about sexual predators. They're talking about that issue. See, that's why they're ticked at how Trump handled it, because Trump wasn't kind of reading the room, the MAGA room on that. It's never been about Epstein. Everybody thinks it's about Epstein. Oh, did he kill himself? Is he really alive today? Or did he commit suicide? No, that's all the sensational stuff, a little bit of tinfoil on the side. That's not what this has always been about. And when President Trump said we're still talking about Epstein, it's not that portion that we're talking about. We're talking about accountability for sexual predators.
Right. And also too, I think the big fear is, and this is what the theories have been, and we're waiting for the evidence, is, are there powerful people in the United States government and just in the United States who are being blackmailed or were being blackmailed because through Jeffrey Epstein, they had damaging information on them? And that is a very serious issue if it's actually happening. Now, again, people are waiting for the evidence on that. We haven't seen the evidence on it other than just connecting some dots and pictures and video clips we have of Epstein hobnobbing around with powerful people. But that is, I think, one of the things that a lot of people in MAGA are waiting for, is like, well, who, they don't believe it's just, average Joe Schmoes out there that were on this Epstein list. They all believe that it was powerful people, and this was all being used as leverage for them to get them to do whatever maybe somebody else wanted, political operatives and whatnot. So that's what I think they also really want an answer to.
Well, it'll be interesting to see if Attorney General Bondi survives this. It did appear when the president at that cabinet meeting earlier this week jumped in as a reporter tried to ask the Attorney General a question, that he was trying to defend her or deflect the question, because I think he understands how damaging this is for her. And I think he likes her and doesn't want to fire her.
Can I just say one last thing about this? Is that, understand, I think I have a pretty good pulse on the MAGA base. And just to be clear, Pam Bondi was never fully like embraced by MAGA, just so everybody understands. She was MAGA light. Gates was the fully embraced guy, right?
Hmm.
But Bondi was MAGA. She was MAGA, but she was MAGA light. And Bongino and Kash Patel are full MAGA, and that's why you're not getting so much. They're not getting as much pushback at all, because which is kind of strange if you think about it, as to MAGA should be giving them pushback too, but they're not. But I think there's some internal stuff going on. I think my guess is Kash. I know Kash Patel well, actually, and Bongino to a degree. My guess is, I shouldn't say my guess, there's been some reporting about they've differed with Bondi on this too. So that's why there's a split between MAGA, and that's why Bondi may be the odd person out here, because she's not fully MAGA. She's MAGA, but she's not fully MAGA.
Well, last thing before we wrap up, and we'll get to this one quickly. New immigration numbers reported by NBC News this week from ICE, essentially saying that we are still seeing a lot of immigration arrests, but not as many deportations, I think, as people were expecting. ICE agents arrested about 33 immigrants in June, the most since that data started being made publicly available in November of 2020. But the number of immigrants deported in June, more than 18,000, is only a little more than half of those arrested. The difference between those arrested and those deported was similar to May. So the numbers, it's not just a 1 month blip. The numbers are similar. 24,000 arrested, 15,000 deported. Since February, the Trump administration has averaged 14,700 deportations per month. That is below the monthly average of 36,000 in 2013. That is the year with the most deportations under President Obama. So, David, there are obviously a lot of reasons for this, why we're seeing a lot of arrests, but not as many deportations. I know some of the reasoning for that has been there's asylum cases that are pending, which prevents the Trump administration from deporting as quickly as they're arresting. But I want to get a sense from you first, David. Trump's immigration, his mass deportation policy that he came into office promising, has it gone according to plan?
Oh, well, it has gone according to plan. Obviously, they want to see more arrests and deportations. But let me step back for a quick second. I mean, this isn't hard, guys. This is really a math issue and a graph issue. The border is relatively silent now. In other words, there's less folks to deport because less are coming in. It's just that simple. When they were under Obama and Biden, there were tons coming in, so there were more to deport. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Now, if you look inside the numbers and you look at interior, that's the key word, interior enforcement, Trump's numbers, the Trump administration numbers, are way above Biden and Obama's numbers in terms of the hard sledding interior enforcement, which is what we're seeing play out in places like Ventura County and other places in California, where they're actually going in and saying, you know what, we're going into, certain parts of the country to weed out illegal aliens. So that part of it is actually up compared to the other administration. So look, if anybody, no one can dare criticize President Trump on immigration as it relates to enforcement. Look, he's come under so much criticism exactly because it's too much enforcement. So this idea that now all of a sudden he's soft on deportations, give me a break. It's because there's no one coming over the border. You can't be deported if you're not coming in the first place.
That's a fair point. I think you're 100% right about that. Dan, I want to throw just a couple of numbers at you as well from a Gallup poll that came out this week regarding the messaging about immigration and whether these are numbers that the Trump administration needs to pay attention to. 85% of Republicans approve of Trump's handling of immigration. No surprise there. That's compared with 28% of independents approve, and of course, just 2% of Democrats. So again, that is not a big surprise, the number of Democrats. But 28% of independents say they approve of Trump's handling of immigration. Notably, 59% of Republicans strongly approve. Independents much more likely to strongly disapprove, 45%, than to strongly approve, 14%. Your thoughts on those numbers?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, not surprising for Democrats to be down there. I think ultimately this is one of those issues where you have to just not worry about the numbers in this situation and do the best you can with it. One area of concern, I will say, John, is David talked about, him doing a good job with enforcement, and he has. But because there's been such high numbers, one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of are people who maybe probably shouldn't be deported, even though they came here illegally, i.e., somebody that came here 20 some years ago. We reported on one that was a pastor who came here illegally 20 years ago. Their kids are American citizens here. They check in every year with Border Patrol or officials, about their whereabouts and where they are. And, they want to become legalized, but it's a difficult path. And then they're getting deported. And it's like, okay, this person has shown that they're a benefit to society. They're a benefit to America. Yes, we're trying to stem the flow here, but are some people that maybe it's not a common sense deportation getting caught up in the loop? And I'm seeing more and more of those. And so hopefully some common sense can be employed in that situation. But I think overall, when you look at the effect, as David mentioned, of less people coming to the border, that is probably the most important thing overall, because that was the issue. Everyone thought they were just going to get in here and be able to say, I'm going to get my asylum meeting and I'm going to appointment and I'm going to be just set free here in America and I'm good to go. That was not going to work. And I think everyone understood that, left and right. And I think now with those numbers, you're sort of just seeing politics, exactly what we said was going to happen. They're taking any image they can of something that looks scary or a deportation, and they're trying to give you the sob story there. And I mean, I think the one we just saw this week was the people in the field, the kids in the field that are being trafficked essentially, and then working in a field, and everyone's like, oh, these poor kids. It's like, well, wait a minute. Why aren't you concerned about them being trafficked over the border and working on a marijuana farm? Like, what's the deal here?
In 105-degree temperatures.
Yeah. And so you're concerned about them being, caught up in deportation rather than them being trafficked. So those issues, to me, those types of things are politics. But I think in general, what needed to happen was the borders needed to stem the flow, and that has happened.
Well, gentlemen, we'll have to leave it there for this week. Another episode of Navigating Trump 2.0 in the books. Until we meet again next week, gentlemen, have a good week.
Thanks, John.
You too.